Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast. My name is Martin Harries, your host, and I'm joined by the film encyclopedia man, Boaz Dix. We are a couple of filmmakers on occasion, but mainly can't stop yapping about movies. On this podcast, every episode we pick a topic from a film that's coming out at the cinema or on VOD. Myself and Boaz pick our favourite film from that topic, or team up against a guest and battle it out to decide which film will become the greatest film of all time. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Please enjoy part 1. Right, this week, as The Samaritan is hitting Prime Video. You're not allowed to call it Amazon Prime anymore, apparently. It's
Really?
Prime Video.
Goddamn rebrandings.
So we'll be talking Sylvester Stallone films. And yet again, people, we are on a rather large guest streak, if you will. We have guests again from the Choose Film podcast. Gary, how are you?
I'm very well. Very hot right now, but very well. Is it cold in here, or is it just me?
Yeah. No, it's bloody hot.
Yeah, I've had about 3 big fans pointed straight at me all day, so I've not been too bad.
Yeah. And for this week, we have a new shepherd in town, Boaz Dix. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good.
Did I get that right? I think I got that right, didn't I?
Yeah, I think I'm not exactly sure what the hell you're talking about, but I'll.
It's a line from Demolition Man, but there we go.
Yeah.
So, Gary, tell us about your podcast. What is it about? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so it started off as a lockdown project, as I think a lot of podcasts did. We're all bored in the house. And the way it works is each season we pick a particular theme, and then we invite a guest onto the show who has to pick a film in relation to that theme. So, for instance, if it was monster movie season, we could do Godzilla, Jaws, things like that. And we don't like talking about the film chronologically. It's like we just have a nice discussion on it. We each bring like 3 positive points on the film, which is really interesting because if a guest picks a film that you hate, because we're a positive podcast, you have to find 3 good points, and it can't be the credits came. You can't do that. The credits rolled, and I was so relieved. Yeah, so that's basically the way it works. We're in all good podcast apps, as I'm sure you are too. And we've been going now for about a year and a half. I think we've released about 70 episodes. So they're not bad.
Nice.
Not bad. And right now we're on Good versus Evil. That's the theme. And the last film that we released was Cruella. And we are going on to the next theme that we're going on to is change.
Change? Okay.
Yeah, just something to do with changing. Yeah, so it's quite interesting, because I've seen a variety of films that I may have never watched before. It really opens. And as a filmmaker myself, it lets me kind of study films and things as well.
Yeah, I guess for me, for change, immediately that came into my head was The Fly.
Great choice. Yeah.
I mean, I like my horror films, so that's definitely a great one for me. If I was thinking of change,
that's great as well, because we try and pick odd and peculiar topics, so it's not just horror films or comedy.
Yeah.
You quickly run out if you do it like that. What's your favourite horror then, Martin?
Oh gosh, that's a big question, Gary. Probably The Thing. Yeah, always is right up there, I think. And
The Thing is really awesome.
Halloween, even though Boaz will hit me over the head for saying that, but yeah, Halloween as well.
No, man, you can love what you like. You can like what you love. It's fine.
Yep. What do we think of The Samaritan then? I mean, and generally just of Sylvester Stallone's career. I mean, for me, he's definitely a staple of, 80s action hero guy, definitely through the early 90s as well, through Rambo and Rocky especially. What do you guys think of Sylvester?
Yeah, I think he's he's an action icon.
I kind of always, as a kid, adored Sylvester Stallone. I used to do boxing because of Sylvester Stallone. I was boxing for about 5 years of my life,
Nice.
and it was all from watching Rocky I love the Rambo films. I think it's quite good because, yes, he plays the action star, but he's, for a lot of his films, he's the action star with a heart rather than it just being like a badass, you know? So, yeah, and I kind of like how he's aged relatively gracefully. In other words, like, he still plays the action star, but he plays the aging action star now. He's not trying to pretend to play someone still like he's, I don't know, his 30s or 40s, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of these guys that still has great appeal, I think, even now. You know, he cameos in, like, Guardians 2 in Marvel, and and still really goes for it with his action, certainly with his Expendables films as well. I think he was definitely one to bring a lot of the major action stars of the 80s and 90s all together with some modern ones, Jet Li, Jason Statham and all that. And, you know, trying to bring back this kind of era of, like, in the 60s and 70s with, like, films like The Magnificent Seven, where you kind of have all these major Hollywood stars all come together in one film. So I quite like the nostalgic aspect of him bringing major stars together in that way with the Expendables films. Yes, with varying success, but, you know, I still find it quite fun.
Yeah. I think if you look at him as well, like back then in the 80s, it was probably Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, and Van Damme, right? And if you look at their careers now, he's definitely doing the better films out of all of them.
Yeah.
You know, or the more known films, I should say. Yeah.
Yep, and somehow he's still keeping the Rocky franchise going with the Creed movies, which is amazing. And for my money, he should have won the Oscar for Creed rather than Mark Rylance, who basically just said, "Would it help?" And he won an Oscar for it. But there we go. In Bridge of Spies.
Yep.
Powerful words.
Yes, that wins him an Oscar. Not saying he's a bad actor, but I'm like, come on, people. Let's have a bit of a balance.
I feel like there's a sore spot there.
Yeah. Right. Shall we go with our pick then, Boaz, first?
Yeah, let's do it.
I found it quite hard to figure out which film to go with. I was kind of thinking like Cliffhanger, Copland, First Blood, Rambo First Blood, and Assassins. I do quite like those films, but we eventually went with Demolition Man, because I think when we'll get into it, it does have a lot of like satirical elements to it that when I first saw it was like, oh, I did not see that the first time, and a little scary now. So what happens in Demolition Man, Boaz?
So Sylvester Stallone plays a super cop called John Spartan. So the film starts with him trying to chase down and defeat like the greatest terrorist criminal on the planet called Simon Phoenix, played by Wesley Snipes, who's kidnapped a bus of 30 people or something. John Spartan, infiltrates his base, ignoring orders, and like a badass kills, all the bad guys' men and stuff like that. And then they have a huge testosterone-filled fight. And they blow up the entire building as well. And then he captures, Phoenix. But it turns out that in the building's explosion, the 30 hostages died in the explosion. And so not only is Phoenix, sent to prison, but also so is Spartan. I think it's for something crazy, like 40 years or something they each get, or something like that. So it flashes back forward. And in that interval of time, society has become incredibly peaceful and really quite dull as well, quite boring, incredibly commercialized, and like really like ultra paternalistic, like everything trying to protect the citizens, you know what I mean? They can't have salt, they can't have this, they can't have that. Yeah. And like everybody has to be like patronizingly positive. It's really fucking weird. During that time, Phoenix escapes his cryogenic prison and goes on a killing spree. And because the cops they haven't had a crime in decades, and they have no idea how to deal with violence. They haven't had an unnatural death in like 20 years or something ridiculous. So they do the only thing they can think of doing, which is, waking up John Spartan and, pitting these two rivals out of time against each other again.
And lots of testosterone is lost.
Lots of testosterone.
Sweat.
he makes up for the city's lack of testosterone. Like all of the missing testosterone has just been clumped together into one muscular golden god Adonis of a man who starts kicking the shit out of everything. It's pretty awesome.
See, this time when I watched it, I actually noticed another synopsis of the film just this time, and it was basically a fictional Tory party releases a convicted murderer to assassinate the poor who are stealing scraps. A 90s-year-old cop is the only one that can stop them.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
This movie is too real, man. It's too real.
Totally.
Yeah.
So what's your initial reaction to this one, Gary?
I love it. Like, as you said, there's a lot of satire in it that I mean, I loved this film as a kid, but I didn't realise half the jokes there. So just watching it this time around, I was like, this film is still awesome. A lot of it holds up. A lot of the action scenes still look quite real. I kind of love the satire of even just the costumes. I think the performances are still good, kind of cheesy, but the whole idea is everything is that wee bit over the top. And I'm still waiting on Sylvester Stallone to do Demolition Man 2. Where is this film?
It would work so well.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely making it now, even a remake or something. Because one of my issues, I really like this film as well for the satirical elements. Yes, the action is fine. I don't think it's anything particularly special. Looking at it now, that's why I wouldn't mind another movie, because some of the effects are pretty dodgy now. But yeah, they have some sort of a bit of charm to them, but some decisions are odd to me.
There is one kind of bit that I think doesn't hold up in a contemporary eye, and it's the baddie, so you kind of get away with it. But it's when I think it's this Asian family walk past, and Simon Phoenix starts making these weird Chinese impersonating Chinese in a really bad way. I was like, oh, but then I'm like, well, he also is a murderer, a rapist, and that, so why not just make him a racist as well, But I was just like, oh, that's a bit wrong.
Yeah. Bowers, what's your initial reactions?
Yeah, man, I had fun with it. I thought it was funny. Yeah, it's very cheesy and very over the top and very crazy, and there's a lot of cringe and stuff. But it's all intentional. It's just brilliant. It's I think it's trying to take the the badass 1980s stereotype of a one-man army, some ridiculous sci-fi stuff, and just take it to its this is silly, as well as you said, satirical commentary on the government and society and where things are kind of heading.
It's got some kind of RoboCop vibes to it, It's kind of hitting that same sort of satire stuff with that as well. Americans love violence, and you're going to kind of it's violence and muscle, and we're just going to kind of take the piss out of it a wee bit.
yeah, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of another version of a Paul Verhoeven movie, I guess.
Yeah.
So, directing then, there's nothing terribly special about the opening scene, other than the opening shot of seeing the Hollywood sign on fire. That was quite striking. The action is fairly slick, not amazing in my opinion, but that explosion at the end of the scene was pretty huge. I was like, my God, that's massive.
Yeah.
And I feel like the special effects guy was like, yep, let's pour some more gasoline on that building, people. Just go mad. Go nuts.
Yeah, that was cool.
And of course, they survive after the ginormous explosion. And I quite like the fact that they don't even bother trying to show how they survived.
Yeah.
They do, and then they do it again at the end of the final fight, where Stallone is just running away from the explosion. They don't even show him surviving later on too. At the end, it's quite wild, that opening, especially that explosion.
It's actually quite interesting to say that it kind of the first scene is all about fire and explosions, and then their last encounter is all about ice and coldness.
Yeah,
it's a nice contrast there. Actually, I never noticed that before.
Well, he even does kind of a reverse of so the bad guy set him on fire. When he comes into the building, he's covered the whole place in gasoline, and he's smoking, and he sets him on fire. And then at the end, they do the same thing where he's covered the floor in liquid nitrogen or something, and he's going to shoot him in the head, and he throws down the ice thing on the ground and jumps up. So it's essentially mirrored, but one with fire, one with ice, and then
And actually, that's when that line is used, is at the start. Is it cold in here, or is it just me? And that's used at the end again as well, to do with like fire and ice. So yeah, works quite well.
The gun battle in the museum is pretty cool, I would say. Very dumb, but very cool and cheesy. I just really like the gun sound effects from the 90s, where the guns just sound really powerful and dangerous. They're just pulling the trigger like all the time.
Yeah.
In these types of films too, you've got to have like glass breaking everywhere, like, Die Hard and stuff. And when they come across a glass floor, it was obvious what was going to happen. The glass breaks and they carry on.
What was interesting about that scene as well was they start off in the I'm going to say the future. They start off in the future, but as they begin to fight, they drop back down essentially into the past, because when they come through that glass floor, it's back into like what their 90s look like. So they almost drop into their own environment as they fight, which I thought was quite cool.
Yeah, I do like the bit. What was it? He flings a TV at him and says, watch more TV or something.
Oh, no, you're on TV.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
You're on TV, yeah.
I thought there were some really cool things about that fight. Yeah, like him flinging the TVs. That bit where like he's almost got him, and Stallone like puts the zapping stick into the water he's standing on, and he like flies up onto the bonnet of the car. That was pretty cool. Although those things are useless because he just immediately got back up.
I don't know how electricity does that though, but there we go.
yeah. But you'd think if it could like launch him onto the top of the car, that should kill him. But he just like gets back up and just continues kicking the crap out of Stallone.
He kind of does that cartoon thing where when someone's like been zapped in a cartoon, they do that noise, and that's kind of what he does, and then just gets on with it.
Just shrug off a massive electric shock.
I wonder if that works in real life.
Don't try it at home. Don't.
I'll just connect myself to the mains and just wash it off.
No. I think one of my favorite action scenes was probably the car chase. That was directed pretty well.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention that. I thought the car chase was bloody brilliant. There was so much tension there.
Yeah, where John Spartan like jumps from like a red muscle car to like a cop car that Simon Phoenix is driving, and they have a little scuffle. I thought that was quite creative. Not sure about, was it Wesley Snipes' Al Pacino impression, but there we go. Say hello to my little thing. That needs some work. The way it ended was quite innovative, I would say, where Spartan can't drive the car properly. He's like, turn left, turn right. No.
Yeah.
And there's a big jump and the car crashes. Again, though, the effects are quite bad, where you just see like bubble foam come out to save him. It was like, that doesn't look good. But I feel like, the action, in a lot of the action scenes, it kind of just ended quite quickly for me. Maybe I'm just greedy because, there's so many great action scenes in movies these days, that are so good, and do feel longer. But
I think it was just enough, right. I guess like there's not a lot of action in it. And when I think about watching Demolition Man, I don't really think about, I can't wait to see these action scenes. I think I just enjoy the film as a whole. There's enough of like, the comedy elements. There's enough of like an action, like it's just an entertaining film, I guess. It's kind of, it's a popcorn flick, isn't it? It's just a wee bit of everything. But one scene that I do love is the phone box scene, when the cops surround Simon Phoenix after he's just broken out. And it's more of just like a quick fight scene. He realises he knows Kung Fu and stuff like that. But what I did find out was that they couldn't close that street for more than like a day. So that whole fight scene is done only in a few hours, which is quite cool, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's impressive, learning that. I mean, I'm not sure you could do that today. I mean, to do it that fast, I mean, setups these days do take a long time.
Totally. I also, it's kind of off topic, but it's not because we're talking about it, because I love how campy like Wesley Snipes is in this. Like the way he plays Simon, he doesn't amazing. Play it as like he's like, Simon says this and he's like ole and a bit jumpy and things. And I think that's one thing I think we need to realise is like, your baddies don't need to be these hard, menacing guys. I mean, even look at Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal. He's quite campy and cheesy, but it's still menacing in its own way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I do love a villain that really just goes for it. it's interesting you say that there are a lot of people that don't like Anthony Hopkins' performance and do prefer the Brian Cox version in Manhunter. But for me, like, Anthony Hopkins is like one of the best actors ever. So, in my opinion,
ditto.
Yeah, I would second that. I definitely love actors when they're playing villainous roles to really just bring some fun to it, because generally they are the most fun. And usually a main critique of action films like this, there's not enough of the villain. Where's the villain? It's too much, on the heavy side of the hero kind of thing.
Jackie Chan was actually asked to play Simon before Wesley Snipes.
Really? Okay.
And that would be really interesting, but he thought at that point in his career nobody wanted to see him play a villain. But maybe that's the best time to do it then, like unexpected.
Yeah.
I do think so. I don't think he's ever been a villain. It would have been a completely different vibe with Jackie Chan.
Totally.
Yeah, I just can't even imagine that. But
I'm not sure he could pull it off.
Yeah. No, I think then he'd play it a lot more, in my opinion. He'd either play it more slapstick or just more serious, and that's just not what Wesley does with the character, so
no.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Baz, you got a favourite shot or scene for Demolition Man?
Yeah, I think probably my favourite scene is the car chase. Yeah, I just thought it looked really cool when he's like on the top of the car and they're having banter and like he's talking to the machine and trying to shoot him, and I just thought it was really well edited together, just a lot of suspense, and he's trying to grind his face down and just all this stuff is happening. I really like that.
Yeah, I do feel like they could have pushed it just a little bit further.
I think maybe one of my favourite shots or one of my favourite scenes is actually Wesley Snipes' escape from the penitentiary, I guess, after he's been defrosted. I think it's just really interesting how he escapes from the handcuffs, he takes them all out, and just that scene, I'll always remember the scene with the eyeball and the pen.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll always remember that. And then, like, the whole MDK, like, alert for the police and...
Murder, death, kill.
Yeah, so I don't know. I really like that scene. There's nothing. I guess it's another action scene. There's nothing too fancy, but maybe it's just as a child, seeing an eyeball and a pen was haunting. It's always stuck with me.
I think my favorite scene is I love the virtual sex scene.
Yeah,
between Sylvester Stallone and Sandra Bullock. They both got these weird helmets on. I love the like intercutting of multicolored, like dark, sexy images of Sandra Bullock with Stallone going, huh?
Yeah.
It's probably like the funniest scene for me. I love the acting from Sandra Bullock too, of just how disgusted she is. Like, like the way she just kicks him out by stamping her feet and just pointing to the door is hilarious. Yeah.
See, on that note as well, like, did you not find it interesting watching that with more of a contemporary eye, especially like after COVID? Because there was probably couples out there as well, right? Who,
oh my God,
like, this is where the films became this whole different thing, because there'd be couples out there who maybe didn't stay together, and probably literally had Zoom sex like that.
Oh my God, yeah. Jeez.
With the whole no touching now, like, you've got in the film when they do the high five, they stop midair and kind of do that circling motion.
Yeah.
All the social distancing things. They speak about...
Be well.
Yes. They speak about Arnie being president.
Oh, yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
They also had the voice-activated lights as well. Now we have that, Alexa, turn on light.
Yeah.
And even other things like the vertical screens. Like in the house, it's a vertical screen rather than landscape. And now, like with TikTok, and we're always on like Instagram Reels, we're watching everything vertically now. Yeah. And there's one other thing it got me. Oh, yeah. When Simon Phoenix goes to the kind of phone box thing and it says to him, "You are great today," or "Have a great day, you look well." That's kind of like, you scroll through Instagram and there's these like really... kind of, sorry for my language, but these wanky quotes. It's like, "Be well and you are well," and stuff. And you're just like, this does not help me at all if I'm in a bad mood. This just makes things worse. So there's quite a lot of things just nowadays. I'm like, they got so much right.
You just hope Elon Musk doesn't watch this sex scene in this film.
Totally.
Well, what was it? Do you remember at one bit they were talking about how it's like they were talking about like it's a cashless society or something? And he was like, yeah, and I mean, I haven't touched cash in a while. I mean, it still exists, but it's mostly all digital now. But he was like, so he won't be able to, pay. I think they only pay with like thumbprints or whatever. He goes, unless he figures out he can cut off someone's hand. Let's hope he doesn't figure that out. But that kind of just reminds me of the way things are going, of like, face unlocked screens and, thumbprint activations and all this stuff, and no money. I think we were going that way anyway, and we're going more that way. So,
well, you're onto something there as well, because I guess we find out halfway through this film, right, that I can't remember the politician's name or the mayor, but he basically is trying to get rid of the poor, right?
Yeah, Dr. Cocktail.
Yeah. And like even in today's society, they're talking about, well, if we get rid of cash, like hard cash, you can't give a poor person £1 here or that, and that is kind of what's. So again, you're right. It's something else.
Yeah.
In the boardroom meetings that are just faces on a screen. I mean, that's now just life. So
that's very normal.
Yeah,
just not spinning.
I was actually going to say, I kind of. Even though it was kind of an awkward shot, I did kind of like that one where, like, he bursts into the boardroom and the doctor isn't there, but he's on these screens talking to him, and he shoots through all the screens, and there's one screen left, and then like his assistant is like to Stallone, like he's over there, and then while he's talking on the screen, just a gun comes out of nowhere. I thought that was quite funny.
That was good.
Didn't see the teleportation device there, though.
Yeah. I mean, he was quite a distance away. That was pretty quick.
Yeah.
But I did like it. It was quite clever. Yeah.
He must be a Olympic sprinter. But yeah, that was funny.
Gary, what's your score for directing for Demolition Man?
I mean, there's nothing spectacular in it, is there? So I would maybe go a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, you can use decimals if you want.
Okay, because there's not that much wrong with it either, and it's hard to make a film, let's go 7.5.
Cool.
Yeah, what do you reckon, Boaz, then, for directing score for Demolition Man? I don't think I would go as high as a 7 for me.
Really? Okay, fair enough.
Like 7 point, just a straight 7?
Yeah, just a straight 7.
7.2, maybe.
No, we can just go straight 7.
Okay. I mean, everything's pretty competent and pretty good, but some of the effects I can't, like, not unsee, really. And some of the decisions, I'll get into acting, are very weird. Right, screenplay then. When I watched this as a kid late at night, I just saw this futuristic world as quite weird and funny, and I didn't see, like, the satire at all, as we kind of all said. But now I find this world a tad scary, because there's this tiny element in me that this world is possible, where literally anything that is deemed bad or bad for you, even sex, is condemned to be wrong, and you have to be like happy all the time. And if you're not, you get punished in some way, some sort of way. Yeah. It's amazing to create like fish out of water comedy, but I feel like this film was way ahead of its time, like, and they didn't know it. Even down to like the uniforms, like this very like fascist uniforms where they have the trousers are all kind of puffed up, on the thighs. I didn't notice that at all as a kid, but now I'm just like, oh, this is weird.
Yeah.
Although Stallone, when he comes out the bathroom after getting into the new uniform, he still looks cool.
Yeah, he does, with the beret, I guess.
Like just the way he walks out, he can basically what we're saying is he can pull off a Nazi uniform. Sorry.
Yeah. But anyway, I was just going to say, I think it's kind of funny because on the face of it, this is kind of like, I mean, it is a utopia, but I just think it's kind of funny just going from the point of view, okay, in the future, it could be some sort of dystopian nightmare. It really isn't that bad. Like, yeah, there's constant surveillance, but there is no crime. Everything is fine. You have every need that you ever want satiated, and everybody's healthy and they live long. It's just boring as fuck, and it's just sanitized really, really badly. And it's commercialized really badly, and it's very patronizing. And there's no freedom of thought.
If you don't like Taco Bell, you're a bit screwed, to be honest.
Yeah, I thought it was Pizza Hut.
Well, that's the thing, actually. You are both onto something there, because the American version was Taco Bell, And then outside of America and the UK, the European versions, they've changed it to Pizza Hut because everybody in Europe didn't know what Taco Bell was, so they wouldn't have got the joke.
That makes so much sense. I watched the British one because I was wondering every time they said Pizza Hut, it didn't match with their lips. They were like, let's go to Pizza Hut. Did you enjoy your Pizza Hut? I was like, what the hell's going on? All right, so fair enough. I thought that was a directing decision. That makes a lot of sense.
That
makes so much sense. But yeah, no, I just think that's a funny way to go about like a dystopia. Just make like a utopia, but just say, man, this is fucking dull. This is really, really dull. Because I mean, that's why the people are like living underground, because they don't like that they have no freedom to do anything.
They like beer, and they want to have a drink, and
they want to live. Yeah.
Whereas
kind of the height of life up the top is like water and tacos or pizzas or whatever, depending on what version you want.
It's quite interesting as well. Obviously, it's a very American film, right?
Yeah.
But they're living underground because, like, they want to live how they want to live. And the two ways they show that is when Sylvester Stallone goes down, it's basically, let's be honest, beer and cheeseburgers is basically what they're saying they want. Obviously, it's a rat burger, but I love that idea. It's so American. Yeah, we're living underground because we want burgers and beer,
There are other cuisines, people.
Yeah. People have died for less. Like, if you're going to fight for freedom. I also find it funny that, like, all the bad language you get, like, ticket. Actually, do you know what this reminds me of? Is it the book, Brand New World? Is it Brand New World?
I've not read that.
Something Huxley. Because this society is very similar to that, because he envisioned it's like a perfect world where everything's sort of, like, engineered and what have you. But it's just like, do you know what I mean? It's really isolating and whatever. And so this is kind of, it just kind of reminds me of that. And I think it's kind of interesting because he's built because what puts this society, this concept forward is the guy's done such a good job, the bad guy, of like regulating everything, that there is no crime, that all the cops, and I suppose if he even tried to get an assassin, none of them would know what the fuck they're doing. So he has to like recruit somebody from a really violent time in the past, Wesley Snipes from the 90s or something.
Yeah, that's another like bit of satire in it, because when Simon Phoenix is escaping and they see the recording of it, one of the cops says, "We are police officers. We're not trained to handle this kind of violence." And I just love that. And then when they go to check out John Spartan, they look at his records, and it's like a video of Spartan rescuing a girl, and it's in the 90s. And one of the cops says, "Is this real life?" And then the news reporter in the video says, "How can you destroy a $20,000 building for a $7,000 victim?" or something like that. And it just shows you, like, even then it's taking the piss out of, like, they don't really believe in, like, human beings. It's all money. It's all about money.
The girl says, "Fuck you, lady."
Yep.
Good answer.
There's also a few, like, just on this we're talking about the screenplay there, like, there's also a joke in there which is interesting with today's society in America again. There's a joke about abortion and needing a license to be pregnant. It's after the sex scene, because he asks about well, what do you do for children, and there's something about abortion being illegal and needing a license anyway to get pregnant. And I just thought, my God, what's happened in America lately? I was just this film is spot on.
Yeah, it needs to be remade or a sequel, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's predicting the second half of that law. You never know. Next time, every American has to, like, I don't know, sign some paperwork if they want to have sex or whatever.
Totally.
This film reminds me a lot of Hot Fuzz in a way, where the NWA like secretly murder people to keep Stanford in perfect harmony. And in this film, it's just like the futuristic sci-fi version where there is no crime and the police officers don't have to deal with crime. And but someone is secretly hypnotizing Simon Phoenix, like, triggering his genetic rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Simon Phoenix to
get rid of the undesirables.
To kill the underground rebels trying to mess up this perfect world. it's just not very subtly done, like, you know, where all the hypnosis is done with like the ATM thingy throwing visual effects at you. But the mystery element of who is pulling the strings is still quite compelling until they give it away that it's Dr. Kotal, the old monk dude. Then the film becomes like 50% less interesting from then on. So it's a bit disappointing that they didn't keep like the mystery element going for a bit longer for me.
I would 100% agree with that. I think I knew, because I spoil a lot of films before I watch them, so I knew what was going to happen. But I didn't know how soon it's kind of just revealed that that's the bad guy.
It's like an hour in or something. Less than that, maybe.
Matt, it's really not that far in. You know, I think you're literally on your, I think, second or third scene with him. I think it's like your third scene with him. And already in the first scene with him, you think he's a bit suspicious the way he's fucking talking.
Very suspicious.
And he's very suspicious, incredibly suspicious. And then, by the third scene or whatever, he meets Phoenix, and it's like, you know what I mean? It's definitely he's doing this. And I'm like, wow, I thought you were going to like save that for way down the line.
It's interesting because literally right after Simon Phoenix and John Spartan meet in the future, they have their first fight in the museum. He's chasing them, and then that's when it happens. They have the encounter with him.
No, exactly. Yeah. So that's the very first time they have their rematch in the new future. Yeah, man, I would have held off on that for a while. I think that was a really missed opportunity. Also, you know, I think once that reveal is done, the Doctor, I kind of didn't really want him around that long. I'm kind of glad he died at the end. I probably would have killed him off sooner. Because, like, Phoenix is way more interesting. And if this guy doesn't even have, like, a compelling twist... Because it could be better if it was, like, you didn't do the twist, he's not compelling, but then at the end, there's the twist, and that makes him compelling. You're like, oh, God, you know, like with twist villains. Yeah. But the only thing compelling about him is the twist, and they give it to you right out of the gate. So I'm like, what is this guy still doing here? I do love when he dies, though, because I like that Phoenix can't shoot him, so he gets somebody else to shoot him. But I love the line where he says, that's who you remind me of. Like, it clicks with him, and he's like, you're an evil Mr. Rogers. You know, and then he has the guy shoot him. I thought that was hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like they kind of wrote themselves into a bit of a hole there as well, with Dr. Kotal, or however you say that name. Because, you know, I feel like if they did remake this film or get a sequel, that they would have Dr. Kotal as the main bad guy at the end, and like have, you know, Phoenix and Spartan kind of maybe team up a little bit and kind of, you know, take on Kotal at the end. Maybe like Kotal releases all of the other prisoners from their cryo sleep, you know, and then you have kind of a big final battle there. So it's more like, you know, our present against the future fascist world kind of thing. Because then it kind of makes it a bit more interesting. And I do feel like they were like, okay, we need to get Wesley Snipes against Stallone at the end. We kind of need to get rid of this guy now. He's done his purpose. We need to get one of Wesley Snipes' goons to shoot him.
It's interesting though you say that, like they need that big, you know, that big fight scene between Stallone and Wesley Snipes, because there's something else that isn't tied up. We go into the sewers and we meet all the lower class people, and then there's that great car chase, and after the car chase, the people from the sewers come up to the streets as if they're going to take charge, but then they don't do anything.
Yeah, they don't do nothing.
They do nothing at all. And maybe that's where it should have been, you know, all the people that are frozen, maybe they come out and there's like a battle with like the lower class, the prisoners, whilst Snipes and the Stallone are fighting.
Yeah, so you could have like a three-way kind of thing, three-way fight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that could have worked out well. And I mean, that happens in a lot of films where you just get, you know, the side characters or whatever, or that society to actually do something to sort of work for its dinner. And they could have built all kinds of stuff into that. Yeah, it's kind of a shame they didn't. I think the only thing the resistance... Because they don't even need to come out of the sewers. They come out of the sewers, the police badmouth them, then they give Stallone a pistol, and then he goes off with the pistol.
And that's it.
That's about it. That is their culmination. What was the point in paying them like a bunch of actors to walk down an empty street. Like, what was the point of that? You know, they could have done in some sort of
I don't know.
Titanic.
I guess they just like their rat burgers too much. Like, nah, you can do it, Stallone.
Yeah,
We're gonna eat. We're still hungry.
yeah. They just want to eat out in the open. Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's kind of a wasted opportunity.
And the doctor guy, I've just thought about this. Do you know who he reminds me of now? A really shite version of Dick Jones from RoboCop. He's kind of got the same idea, you know. He's like he's in charge of something. He's a bit corrupt. Also, RoboCop can't shoot him, just like Wesley Snipes can't shoot this guy.
Yeah,
and then it's like that really great scene. Spoilers for RoboCop at the end, when it's Dick, you're fired, and then because he's fired, they can shoot. It's kind of like the same idea there.
I think it's quite similar. Yeah. I'd say Dick is
the better villain.
I like Dick a lot more than he's the better villain, mainly because like. I think with this guy, he's as sanitized as the society he's made, so I think that kind of matches. Doesn't really raise his voice. He's not like an overt personality, and I think he wears a lot of Pope stuff, so he's very like regal and sort of my son and stuff. And so I don't think he's got a huge amount of personality. Like Dick was an asshole, and he was incredibly arrogant. I quite liked him as a villain because you're like, man, someone ought to punch your teeth in. So maybe they could have done that, made him a lot more unlikable. But that said, you know, I do really like one. I like the fish out of water aspect of the script, and I think they do that well. Of just like all this absolutely insane shit being explained to Stallone, and he just doesn't really get it.
Yeah,
and I think that's just done like really well. I also like the bit of the script where he starts crocheting, like he does a lot of like whatever. Yeah. And he's like, I made this for you. I crocheted it. He goes, I don't know how I know how to crochet, but I've just been crocheting, you know, all the time. And she was like, oh, yeah, it's part of your rehabilitation. We put that into your pod. And he was like, you made me a seamstress. And he's like really pissed off with it. I like the bit after the car crash as well, because they bring back that joke and he's like cut up his uniform. And he's like, you're bleeding and your uniform's torn. He's like, don't worry, I can sew it up. It's like, damn it. You know?
Yeah, it's so good because he's such like this strong, like heterosexual guy, you know. Because there's that scene as well when he talks to the other cop that he knew back in his prime, and one of the other cops he says something like, they seem to be friends, but he talks to him in the most profound way. And then Sandra Bullock says, well, if you read my study, you would know this is how heterosexuals used to bond, or something like that.
That was really funny.
And the whole joke as well, I mean, it's probably my favourite part in the script because it's never answered. He doesn't know how to use the free seashells. I just love that joke, and it's never answered. We never know. Yeah. And again, not to keep bringing it back, but that joke came up so much around my friends because the whole of the UK ran out of toilet paper. So it was like, you should get the free seashells.
That's really funny.
That is hilarious.
I think that should be a prank if you have guests. Just hide the toilet paper and just have three seashells on a dish. Are they going to work that shit out?
God, I would love that.
I just feel like Stallone gets that a lot, you know.
How the hell do the three seashells?
Oh, come on, not again.
Like, do I scrape from one side and the other seashell from the other side? What's the point of the third? I don't. I like where he solves the seashell problem the first time. Where he's just like, pain in the ass, motherfucker, shit, and whatever. The thing's just getting off these citation cards.
You are fined 1 credit for violation of the verbal morality statute.
Just like, there we go. I've solved the problem.
I think the scene that really dates this film is when like Stallone and Sandra Bullock get ambushed by some of the goons, and Bullock is taking out a load of goons quite easily, and even saves Stallone's life. But moments later, he stuns her with his baton, so she can't be involved in like the final showdown. Yeah. And I'm like, why not? She just proved herself that she can take care of herself, so it dates it a little bit.
Yeah, she's kick ass.
Yeah,
she can take care of him as well. You know.
Yeah, you're right. That does date it. Yeah.
So funny lines, people. I think for me, like, you know, one of my favorites is, you are fined 1 credit for violation of the verbal morality statute. Every time someone swears. But dirtbag is not a violation, apparently. He definitely says dirtbag in the police station and doesn't get violated.
Maybe that's just good. That's what they call bags of dirt. Not a problem. Yeah.
One that we kind of spoke about briefly, though, is that how I think it's an in-joke because Arnold Schwarzenegger and Stallone are friends, but the fact that he can't believe that Arnold Schwarzenegger is president. He's like, what? Like, and it's almost an in-joke. It's like two friends, I think, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same idea. I don't know if you've seen Last Action Hero, but they go to the video store and Stallone is playing Terminator 2 in the poster. So I think it's like they're roughly about the same time.
So ones for me are in the museum when Wesley Snipes is trying to break the glass with a few kicks and a guy comes out and says, "Mellow greetings, what seems to be your bargain?"
I like where he asks him, like, how much do you weigh? And then just like smashes him through the glass. That was quite fun.
When the cops are trying to like apprehend Wesley Snipes near the beginning, the cops asking for advice from the computer, and the computer says, with a firm tone of voice, demand maniac lie down with hands behind his back.
Yeah.
Or else.
If he's still not doing it, add or else.
This line I thought was really funny, but it's where they're at her like apartment, and she was like, there is of course a well-known and documented connection between sex and violence, not so much a causal effect, but a general state of neurological arousal. And after having observed your behavior this evening and my resultant condition, I was wondering if you'd like to have sex. I like his reaction because it does come out of nowhere. I was like, what the fuck? And then he's like, sex? Yeah. With you? Yeah. I just really like that. It's just the best way to ask someone for sex. It's like so, it's like so forward, so clinical. Yeah. I don't think it would work in a club, but
no. I love the line afterwards when it goes wrong, and he's like, "All right, Huxley, why don't we do it just the old-fashioned way?" And she's like, "Ew, disgusting! You mean fluid transfer?"
Yeah, that was fun. So actually, so her name is Huxley. So I do think this took heavy inspiration from what was that book I just said? I can't even remember. Brave New World. Okay. Yeah, because that world is it's like this unimaginable, amazing utopia, but it's just really, really regimented.
And I just love every line where like Sandra Bullock is getting like sayings wrong. Where she says he's finally matched his meat. He really kicked his ass.
And then there's one she says, and he's like, close enough.
Oh yeah, that was like it was like you can take this job and shovel it.
Yeah.
It's like close enough.
And such reckless abandonment looks like there's a new shepherd in town.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite is break now, you Mickey Mouse piece of shit. As the car crashes, that was fun. So, screenplay score, Gary, what are you going for?
Well, after like how much it's got right in the world and just the whole satire of it all, I'd go stronger with direction. I'd probably say an 8 on it. Just quickly on that though, they quickly mention in the film that John Spartan's got a daughter, and Sandra Bullock's character could look her up. And he says no. In the original screenplay, she's actually a part in it, and she's older than Stallone. And they kind of talk about that, which is quite interesting. And she ends up being part of the rebels that are living underground.
Wow!
For the screenplay, there's an added element there as well of some stuff. So yeah, it's any.
I reckon they should have added that back in. Would be an interesting idea.
They did it for Aliens as well, like with Sigourney Weaver, because she's in cryo sleep at the start of Aliens, and then they look up in the extended edition. There's a photo of her daughter who's now older than her, but that was cut as well from Aliens. Maybe it's just like a touchy subject.
Maybe they just don't. They don't think the audience will get it.
Yeah,
it's daughter but older. I think they should have added it back in because that's a really interesting idea. Your kid is older than you. They have more life experience than you. That's fucking weird. Like, that's a really heavy concept. But, I just think too many producers or whatever, they think the audience is thick. And I've seen this with other screenplays. They're like, let's cut that out. People won't understand it. It's like, people aren't thick. People aren't stupid, just because you don't understand it. I think they should have kept it. That's a really interesting idea.
There's a lot of, like, really interesting satirical stuff that they get right, as Gary says. But again, like, there's some decisions that could have made the film a lot better in retrospect. So, I don't know, like a 7.8 or something?
Yeah, right.
Right, acting then. The title sequence is kind of weird, where I think it shows they don't have like the proper special effects to pull off the effect properly, where Stallone is in a cryo cell and the camera's just going all around, Stallone's naked body, but there's no like frosting effects and no effect to show that he's frozen. So they just get Stallone to act completely still in a plastic jar. And it's just weird watching it now. Like, Stallone must be like, oh, really? There's no other way of doing this? I mean, I do like to think Mr. Freeze was like a technical advisor on this film, Arnold Schwarzenegger's. It's like, yeah, that's the only way. But yeah, that it doesn't look great, that bit, the title sequence. Wesley Snipes is amazing in this film. He's having literally the time of his life. Like, some of my favorite moments from him is where he's like beating up a load of cops near the beginning, and he's literally teaching a cop how to box briefly before he kicks him, and of course blows up a car and somehow lives. And doesn't run away fast enough. But
I think Wesley Snipes' energy in this role is mesmerizing. I think he just does it's like he's a fun character to watch. But like, even when we talk about the script, it's kind of weird. Like, I had the most fun seeing Wesley Snipes, and he does say some cool things and some funny things. I don't think, though, he has like the best lines in the film. But with what he's got, he can just make it seem cool. It's like, even when there's scenes where he doesn't have any lines, it's just nice to like, he's just like fucking buzzed all the time. Like, he's always moving, always dancing, always, smiling, having the time of his life. Yeah, he's just quite nice to like look at, you know what I mean? Where you're just like, man, he is having a good time. He's having a really good time here.
Yeah, he's full of energy. He's got so much energy in it. He's as you said, he's like bouncing about, always moving, and
absolutely,
you can tell he's kind of giving it his all.
Yeah. So I just kind of think, without that energy, I think if you cast anybody else, I don't think you have the same character. Because I don't really think it's much about his dialogue. Because, as I said, I'm thinking of like best lines. I can't really think of too many of his lines, but just how he is, his actual being. And I mean, that's 100% Wesley's come up with that. So yeah, I think he does a really good job. He kind of just, in my mind, he makes the character. And
I think Wesley Snipes is a great action like star all on his own as well as Stallone and Schwarzenegger. I feel like he kind of has his own unique style of action as well, with like the kind of karate-esque moves in there. I mean, I'm no fighting expert, obviously, but I do feel like he has a unique style to everyone else, which I quite like. I think my favorite performance is actually Sandra Bullock. I just find her hilarious in this film. Just the way
she's really funny.
She's kind of playing with this idea of being, very much part of this world, being very happy all the time, but there's kind of an edge to her that she's very reminiscent and nostalgic about the 20th century. And that kind of, it's really subtly done of how that sort of stuff comes into her performance. And just the way she gets all these lines wrong, trying to be cool in the 20th century is so just like comedy gold for me. I mean, I almost picked this film when we did Sandra Bullock films earlier this year.
Yeah, I think her comedy timing is really, really good.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of Sandra Bullock as well. In another action film she's in is Speed, where she delivers some good comedy parts in that as well. Like she just got arrested like the month before for speeding, and
really
there's some jokes in that.
That's hilarious.
One of the things that's really interesting about her character in this, and I think she does it really well, is we as an audience need to understand this world along with Stallone, and she's the person that explains it to Stallone and us for a lot of it. So she almost, as well as being like the comedy joke,
she's the gateway into this world.
Yeah, she actually does a lot with that character.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely really like subtly done in terms of the script as well, of like not making the film very exposition-y. I didn't feel like there's a particular exposition scene, like an exposition dump, if you will. There was none of that for me.
It's the reason I can't watch CSI is because like one forensic person will explain to another forensic person what they're doing. And it's like, they know, like, stop explaining stuff.
I never thought about that, but yeah, that is really true. They need to do a CSI where they have just a grad student or something. Just someone for work experience. They're like, I have no fucking clue what's going on.
Favourite performance for me? You know, I would probably agree. I'd probably go Sandra Bullock, actually. Yeah, I always remember her and Stallone's chemistry in it. I think the two of them bounce off each other really well. But Stallone is kind of playing Stallone in this, even though I really love Sylvester Stallone, but he is playing Stallone, whereas she's kind of like the bread and butter for it.
Bowers?
Oh, man. I'm gonna be unique. I think
Wesley Snipes?
Yeah, I'm gonna go Wesley Snipes. Yeah, I'm gonna be unique here. But Sandra Bullock is amazing in this.
Acting score, Gary. What are you going for?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nothing Oscar-winning in it, is there? So I would maybe go. I go for 7.5. Also, Jack Black is in this film as well in a very small part as one of like the rebels.
Really? I seriously didn't see that.
Yeah, I did see him in one shot. Yeah, he has no lines. Yeah. Buyers, what should we go for acting?
Should we go with an 8?
8.2? I think for me, it's one of the strongest elements.
Yeah, right.
Cool. Right, let's add up the scores then for Demolition Man. Demolition Man gets 46. Exactly.
Nice.
Which I don't think is going to win. Especially with Gary's choice. That's it for part 1. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Check out part 2 to see who wins. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us what your favourite films are relating to the episodes. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast, for Twitter at FVF_podcast. If you do, we'll give you a shout out on the next episode. If you're feeling really generous, you can buy us a one-off coffee at our Buy Me a Coffee account. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.